Happy New Year, nostalgia lovers. Today, we are talking about custom action figures. This is a most interesting pop culture phenomenon as there are many artists out there taking action figure fun into their own hands. It's an art form and an excellent example of childlike creativity manifesting in adults. Today, we have a special guest, my friend Bryan Edward Castle, who has been making his own custom action figures for years. Bryan, thanks so much for being here today on Growing Up Movies. It's really good to see you.
Well, thanks, Greg. I appreciate you having me on the show.
Absolutely. And, ever since we've met, I've been thinking of you as being somewhat of a modern day Renaissance man. You do a lot of really interesting things, including you work for the Department of Veteran Affairs, which
Yep.
is a be a force for good entity in of itself. You also you're a pillar in the community in Tucson, Arizona, where you teach capoeira and martial arts and dance trainings to students. That's really interesting. I know you're looking into opening a new studio, so we're going to talk about that a little later.
Okay.
The main reason we're here is to talk about another business that you're involved in, custom action figure creation.
Right.
This is such a cool thing, and it's something I discovered. Actually, I first saw it at Comic-Con a few years ago, and
Okay.
there's a number of guys like yourself out there on Instagram and other places making these custom action figures, and they range from anything from movie characters and
Right.
comic book characters to making these figures of your friends and family. And I believe
Exactly.
I believe you've done a little bit of all of these things. It's just super rad. And so I would love to open up the floor to you and just talk a little bit about, what your inspirations for this was, how you got started, the process, give us a general overview of it.
Well, thanks, Greg. Well, so like all of us back in the day, we all had the Mego figures, like the Chips, the Poncho John, Indiana Jones, and like the original super friend figures. But for me, it was a little different because I didn't really see a lot of figures that looked like me. And it was super funny. My old man used to always get mad because I destroyed them because we had these brown markers. We had brown markers, and I would just paint all their faces brown, because I wanted them to look like me. But so when I actually started doing it over the years, what really started me out was the Marvel Legends figures. The
Mm,
Marvel Legends, they were very articulate. I liked the way they moved. They weren't like the Star Wars version where it was kind of like the robot arms. They didn't have a lot of articulation. But when that Marvel Legends came out, like that series one, there was one gentleman online called Iron Cow. I believe his name was Matt. And if you're out there, Iron Cow, I always talk about you because you helped me out so much, and I really appreciate you guys. If
props.
you look him up, it's a gentleman by the name of Iron Cow. So I got my first. I want to say, I look around. It's in my back here in the old Captain America shelf back there. There was one Captain America he made for me, and I asked him. I just asked him point blank because this was before there was a lot of forums and things like that. I just asked him, I said, "How do you make these figures?" And he was really open to it. And he was just like, "Hey, man, this is how you do it. You pop them apart, you take the pieces and you use a little Sculpey, you get a little paint." And of course, my first couple were really, really bad. But he walked me through a lot of them. And the one thing he said that still sticks to me, and it's funny when I say this, a lot of people get super hurt. And I say, "You're not unique." And people
Right.
are like,
Yeah.
"What?" It's like, "No, you're not unique. Your face is not unique." And you're like, "What do you mean?" It's like there's literally four head types for every person, for all nationalities, for females, for males,
Uh,
and you just have to be able to see. Like it's good now because I'm bald. So I make this is a perfect example, right? You take my glasses off, you shave off the beard in your mind, and now you have the shape of my head. You look at it sideways, you say, "Okay, that's what that's," and I keep that like image in my head when I go to the store. So I go to store, I go to eBay, whatever, garage sales, and I just see a bunch of figures and I see this. So I know, okay, if I want to make this figure, I need to put a beard on it. I
right.
need to throw some glasses on it. And I change the hue of the skin. And there you go.
Wow. That's really cool. Yeah, I was actually, getting into that the whole concept of, it's only a few certain molds, right, of the
Right.
figures. I remember, watching the Toys That Made Us, and the Star Wars figures, they were
Yeah.
based off of old, action figures that Kenner already had, and just
hmm
repurposing a lot of that. Can you talk a little bit more about just like, the process of it, without giving, I don't want to give away your secrets of how you do this.
No, no, no.
But
I
I'm
don't have any
fascinated
secrets
with
because
the process.
I want everybody to get in there and enjoy this. So there's no secrets, man. I'm like Muhammad Ali. If I do a magic trick, I show you how I did it at the end. But basically, so can I step back? I'm gonna grab
Yeah. We want to see these things.
Talk about something. We'll make it easy one. We'll do it easy. All right. So this is Tyrone Cash, or is it from the Marvel Ultimate series of the quote unquote the original Hulk, right?
Nice.
You see there?
Yeah.
So basically, what you do, let's just say you have a figure. If you're not doing a lot, if sometimes you take it in, you put it into a boiling water because they have joints and they can pop off. The pieces pop off. You put it in the water, you let it pop for the things you want to take apart. Pop them off, you remold them, and then you just pop it back on there and you airbrush it, and then you add other pieces to it. I have what I call a boneyard.
Yeah.
And in the boneyard, I have a bunch of pieces of other figures, things like that, that could be used for things, like the T from it. I think that's from like a Barbie doll or something like that.
Wow.
The knuckle rings were hand molded and things like that, but the belt was off like a Buffy. And I'm amazed that I remember what things these dolls came from, because I made this doll, I'll say about 9-10 years ago.
Wow.
I can't believe I still remember what the pieces are that goes to it.
But my
thing is, I do a lot of dolls to look like children of Black, Indigenous, Latino races, because all the time when I was a kid, the one thing you always saw about action figures are people of color in the comic book realm. When they were represented, they always had Black Lightning, red something, yellow this. Why can't they just be the superhero name?
Yeah.
So I kind of went out to make versions of those heroes that had likenesses of people like myself and indigenous people, and so we all represented. Kind of like
Absolutely.
I really like what's going on now in the superhero world, that everyone is getting a fair shake.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just gonna say, in recent years that trend has changed so much.
Oh yeah.
The diversity, because we live in a diverse world and we live in a diverse country, and everybody should be represented across all platforms of entertainment, because entertainment appeals to all of us.
And there's one, I want to give one shout out to a gentleman on that Toys That Made Me show. I believe his name is Vonner, and he's been a great inspiration to me. He works at Hasbro, and I've actually communicated with him a couple times, and he likes my figures, and he was always like saying, we're about the same age, so he has my dream job. He works for Hasbro, and he actually makes action figures for the Hasbro collection.
That's cool.
Marvel
that's
collection.
Cool. Do you, so you mentioned you do some the molding yourself. So you take some pieces from the boneyard and then reshape them to customize for a particular, person or character?
And Thor is one of my favorite characters, but I decided to do my version of Thor, John Henry.
Yeah.
Right. And you can tell this John Henry looks a little bit like this guy when he had hair. So yeah, the sculpty on it, we'll just pop his little head off there. You can see the hair, that's all sculpty, the face. And sometimes I actually do full molds on the face. I don't really like the 3D printers. I kind of feel like that's cheating, but maybe that's the old man in me.
Yeah.
So I actually sculpt my own heads, and I sculpt a lot of pieces. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you have a couple of places that I looked at before where you online, where you have these Final Vinyl, Figure Realm,
right?
Afro Superlistic. Can you talk a minute about those? Those are your two platforms, right, where they're out there?
Yes. So Final Vinyl is another large platform for customizers, and I got on there, I want to say about 15 years ago. 15 years ago, I got on that site and started working with a lot of customizers. And it's funny that the Figure Realm site Hasbro is Hasbro circles around that site like vultures because they see because that site came around and Customizer came around very uniquely because there was a lot of dolls that people wanted or action figures that people wanted, and they just weren't making it. Hasbro, when they first started out, they made 4 figures basically over and over again. And you could probably name on your hand: Iron Man, Spider-Man, Captain America, and 5 different versions of Iron Man again, right? And then every once in a while they throw in Incredible Hulk, or excuse me, and Wolverine. But those dolls were made over and over again. But what happened to all those B-real characters like Molecular Man, Space, Speedball, the ones that people really liked, you know, and of all of us collectors, after the first 2 or 3 series of Marvel Legend, you were like, okay, let's step out the box. Doctor Strange, oh, you know, something like that, Hawkeye, some of the really cool ones. So we start making our own dolls ourselves. And Figure Realm was one of the bigger sites that a lot of the customizers are on that are making their own version of dolls. And it was very funny because we had a big forum about that. I don't know if you read Marvel, but there was a comic book came out for a while. It was called. They did a kind of a series of the old men superheroes, like Old Man Logan, Old Man Captain America, Old Man King Thor. It was a whole series of all what happened at the end of life for all these superheroes when they got really old. And the first big one was King Thor. It was Thor when he was supposed to be, you know, couple millennia after human beings died out, and he was just kind of by himself. He was a god of nothing. And it was a really great series. And I get that Ragnarok's, that last movie that just came out, what kind of alluded to it, pieces of it.
Yeah.
But they made this, it was a King Thor. He was missing an arm, he had an eye patch like Odin, and it was a great thing. And we all made dolls of this. That was as soon as that doll came out, Hasbro made Build-A-Figure. So then we did it again. We did it again. Now, of course, Hasbro, please don't get me, but you know, we all kind of just thought this what was going on. So we kind of put our heads together and did another doll. For like 3 months, we all did the same doll. And then the next line at Hasbro had that doll. So we were like, all right.
Yeah. Well, I wonder also, like, I think you and I spoke about Super 7, you know, that company that makes all sorts of pop culture action figures, a lot of retro stuff. I have a ton of their stuff, but I have to think that, you know, guys like you maybe even inspired like a company like that because they, you know, they make figures of movies that never had action figures made of them. So kind of like what you have been doing this whole time. Man. Like there is a market out there for some of these
most definitely
got made.
Most definitely, man. I probably think they were probably one of us, and he was just like, man, I think this could work, you know, because a bunch of us started. We were literally just trading figures. You're like, you know, everybody put a figure up. Oh, I like that. Oh, I'll make you this one. I'll make you this one. You got this one. I like this one. If you make 2 of these, I'll make 1 of these. You know, hey. And then the 3D molding came out. Now I'm old school with it, but I do like some versions of it because like Isaiah Bradley is like my hero, right? And for years I've been trying to figure out how to make that shield, you know, how to make it accurate. And I never really got into the 3D modeling, but there's a kid in the Philippines, and he was like, man, I'm gonna send you a shield. And he just literally just sent it to me one day. He was like, if you just make me an Isaiah Bradley, one of yours. I was like, but yours are as good as mine, man. Probably even better. He's like, no, I just want one of yours, though. You know, and awesome. I feel like that you know, that Super 7, they're probably just one of us guys that just kind of figured out, you know, hey, let's do this, you know, let's run with it.
Wow, that's so cool. It's just really fascinating the, you know, the history that you have with it and all the stories. It must be like creatively so satiating for you. One of the big things that I talk a lot about here on Growing Up Movies is the crossover between pop culture nostalgia and childlike creativity, and how we were all creative when we were young, and it's important to embrace that creativity as adults because it actually helps soothe the regular anxieties that we have in adult life, from working to families and relationships and all the difficulties we have to deal with in this world. And being creative is a great outlet. So I try to inspire people to kind of reach back to that creativity that we all had as kids. And in custom action figure building, I see this is a perfect example in my mind of that crossover, because you're taking, you know, pop culture icons like the Marvel characters or whatever you want, basically, from movies, comic books, TV shows, etc. And then, embracing your own inner creativity, and there's that combination. So it's kind of like the retro love for these characters that we loved as kids and continue to love as adults, and then combining that with the creative element. So I'm just interested in hearing kind of your perspective on that. And does that give you a source of positivity in your adult life to be able to continue?
Oh man, you have no idea. I mean, as you mentioned earlier, I work for the VA and I do a lot of community work and things like that. And don't get me wrong, I love those facets of my personality.
Mm.
But when I just really just want to zone out and just have a good time, I'll come into my office, grab a couple pieces out the boneyard, and I'll just, sometimes, reading a comic book was always fun. That's always relaxing. But the tangible, like having that action figure in your hand and kind of just looking at it and just making it the piece with it, it does it. That like soothes my soul, man. I love it, Like literally, sometimes I'll go to my comic book store and there'll be a new comic book out, and there's just an action figure in there that I just want, and I was like, I know it's not gonna be done, so I'll just look around the boneyard, start digging in the boxes, like, yep, that's the beginning of the body, and I'll just sit there and read the comic book. As I'm reading the comic book, I'll start making the doll.
It's incredible. It's incredible. And by the way, I'd like to add that we're both lucky that we both have wives that are okay with us doing this and collecting action
this
figures.
Is all outside the house. This is not part of my house. This is my little cave.
That's your cave.
My house looks nothing like this.
Nostalgia man cave, I'll call it.
Yeah. Totally.
Cool. Thank you, Bryan. So, one last thing, of course, we want to talk about, and this is another source of creativity in your capoeira work and the dance and martial arts. I know that you're working on a big project right now.
Right.
So just if you want to talk about that for a minute, and we'll put the website up and everything.
Okay. Well, thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to talk about that. So I just recently came back from a visit from my teacher, Mestre Corion. He's a world-renowned mestre in capoeira, and I just got promoted to mestre myself. And with that happening, yeah, thank you. We're moving forward, and we're going to be expanding our business. And we're looking to grow our community outreach programs. We do capoeira, we do ballet folklorico, we do hula, we do eskrima. Basically, all these beautiful cultural movements from these people to make us all love each other a little bit more. Because if we can see each other in our natural element, then there's no reason to not smile at each other, right? So I'm putting together a GoFundMe to expand this building, and we do a lot of nonprofit work, we do a lot of community work, and any little help that anybody can do, we'd be greatly appreciated.
Oh, that's amazing, Bryan. And again, another example of you being a force for good and out there promoting creativity, because that's a whole other, creative, artistic, different cultural movements,
Yeah.
and it's all part of creativity and how it can help soothe the soul. So, Bryan, really appreciate you, man, and everything that you do. Thank you so much for being here today on Growing Up Movies. It was just awesome. This is fascinating. Fascinating.
If I can say one thing to the future customizers out there, don't let anybody tell you your work is not good. Try, paint, break a couple dolls, and then keep doing it, because one day you're going to look down. It doesn't matter if no one else likes it. If you were satisfied with what you did and it made you feel good, mission accomplished, man.
And that goes the same for all creative endeavors that,
Sure.
what can make you feel good for your soul, and,
right.
That's always important. So thank you so much, Bryan. Really appreciate you being here today on Growing Up Movies. Everybody out there, please subscribe to the YouTube channel. That's the most important thing for us, because in early 2023, I want to release our series, which is Growing Up Movies Presents Assholes in Arbitration. If you think that title is funny, it is. But I need more subscribers to the YouTube channel. Also follow us on social media across the board, and we'll see you next time on Growing Up Movies. Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you, Greg, for having me.
Thanks,
Appreciate
Bryan.
it.